Nick Robertson impresses again as the Maple Leafs beat the Habs over the weekend. And did Arber Xhekaj deserve a suspension for his attack on Cedric Pare? We'll discuss that, break down the Leafs win, and get you updated on everything going on at Maple Leafs camp. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leafs centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. What's going on, Dave? How are you feeling on a Monday? A victory Monday, I might add.
A victory Monday, yeah. No need to panic anymore. Panic is all gone.
Panic's gone. It's a 500 club through preseason, and all is well. All is well in Leafland. At least with another 2-1 win over the Montreal Canadiens, this time going into their building and getting it done against a more inferior team, which is, good to see, obviously. We kind of pumped the brakes when they beat the Canadiens the first game, but the second game you send over a team that's not filled with as many of your NHLers, and they go through and still get the victory. Always nice to see. But Dave, I think probably the main thing we got to talk about and the big story that's coming out of this game. Yes, Nick Robertson impressed, couple more goals. He looked good. We'll talk about that. Obviously, the penalty kill was perfect. Hildeby looked good. We'll break down all of that stuff, but we got to start with the knee on Patrik Laine and the ensuing attack from Arber Xhekaj, because I don't know about you, when I watched that, it was gutting to see. Obviously, Xhekaj clearly crossing a line here, and one that I thought for sure was suspension worthy. The league felt otherwise. He was only fined $3,385.42, which was the maximum allowable under the current CBA based on what he makes, and did not get suspension, escapes with just the fine. And to me, that is not justified. I don't know where you sit on that. We haven't broken down and had that conversation, but I thought that was just gross for him to get away with, the attack on Pare and only have $3,300 taken from him. That should have been multiple games.
It says something when I was talking to some colleagues of mine and colleagues who've, played the game too, and know the sport pretty well, and they're like, it gave them Todd Bertuzzi vibes.
Exactly.
In terms of what he did. Now, the result of it, obviously, we know Bertuzzi was way worse because of what happened, but
yes.
When I saw it live, and I'm just like, where is it right to punch a player in the back of the head repeatedly with your gloves on, by the way, which is also not allowed, and no one's stopping it? I understand Arber Xhekaj is a big guy, and that's, stepping in on that, it would be very tough, but it's a rule in the UFC that you're not even allowed to punch a guy in the back of the head for a reason.
Yeah.
There was obviously, I understand where the situation Xhekaj was in, coming to defense of his teammate. He saw red, couldn't stop. At the same time, you have to be responsible for your actions, and basically what the NHL player safety is telling us is retribution like that, going and crossing a line, is only worth $3,300.
So why did Morgan Rielly get suspended 5 games last year? What Arber Xhekaj did was 1,000 times worse, in my opinion, than what Morgan Rielly did last year.
Yeah, 1,000%. He went out. If we went through what the criteria was for Rielly's suspension, a player that did not want to engage, in a way unsuspecting.
Yep.
And
he hit him in the head.
Him in the head.
Contact to the head. Check.
Contact to the head once. He didn't wail on the guy.
Right.
I don't know. I truly do not know what like the lack of and as you said, like this is what the CBA allows. So the CBA believes it's okay. The
Well,
rules not CBA.
no.
Yeah.
That's just for fines. You can only
Yeah.
be fined an X percentage
Yeah.
of how much money you make. So it's not the CBA allows
Okay.
for anything. It's just based on how much he makes.
But the rules dictate that the best punishment that the player safety could dole out based on what they saw was a fine versus a suspension, which I don't understand.
Ludicrous, absolutely ridiculous. Like it's just, and that's the whole point of suspensions, is to try and deter people from doing these actions. I mean, all I keep thinking of is, the Mighty Ducks when Buddy takes a slash or gets a penalty for the slash, and he says, "Ha ha ha, well worth it," as he goes off to the penalty box. Like
Yeah.
Arber, that guy, it's like, oh, $3,300. I got to let out my frustration. Ah, well worth it. Next time you'll think twice before knee on knee with our star player. If it's only going to cost me 3,300 and not 4 or 5 games, well worth it. Like it just, I don't know, man. It's just not a good look on the league. Like to allow Xhekaj to get away with something like that. That's not what you want to see. That stuff is not part of the game. It's just not part of the game.
No.
Like, yes, I get it. There's a code. You got to stick up for your teammates when something happens. And look, that wasn't a good play on Cedric Pare, right? Like we'll admit that was not a good play. A knee on Laine, and who knows how long Laine is going to be out for. That did not look good at all. So like I totally get Montreal wanting to seek retribution for that hit. I get it, but do it the normal way, right? Like at least confront him face to face, right? Not go behind him, grab him, and just punch him, and then when he goes down, continue to do so. Like that is not how it works in the NHL. That's not the code, right?
No.
Like we're talking about, oh, the code, you got to stick up for your teammates. Well, that's not it either, right? So
No, it's not.
Just not a good play overall, and I think the player safety really dropped the ball with just a fine and not a suspension. I was shocked to wake up the next day and see that it was only a fine. Absolutely shocked because you're right. I've seen plenty of people say that was Bertuzzi-esque in the way it was just from behind, retribution later in the game, and luckily for Pare, he is okay and he's fine, and he spoke after the game and tried to reason with it. I guess he was like, yeah, he was just sticking up for him, like he was all right, which maybe is the difference between a fine and a suspension, I suppose. Like if Pare had, suffered some trauma or suffered, a concussion or something, perhaps it's a little different, and player safety always tries to say that the player's injury is not always factored in, or should it be factored into whether or not a suspension comes. But I don't know. It feels like that may have been the case here, where if there was a serious injury from that altercation, I'm assuming that Xhekaj would have got more than a $3,300 slap on the wrist if he had inflicted some serious damage onto Pare.
Yeah. So I understand, and look, I know I talked to a friend of mine who's a Habs fan. He was pissed about the Laine hit, but he also said that was way too far for Xhekaj.
Yeah, two things can be true, right? Pare, bad hit, don't like it, not a fan, right? Also, Xhekaj, not a fan of that situation either, right? Two things can be true at once, right? And both sides of the aisle can agree that the hit on Laine, not a good hit, stuck his leg out. I mean, was he trying to injure Laine? No, I don't believe so. But he did stick his leg out to try and slow him down in the defensive end. That was the intent, to slow him down. Caught his knee, it buckled. It doesn't look good. I'm sure we'll hear more on Laine in the coming days and what a timeline might look like, but doesn't sound very short term. It didn't look short term when he was taken off the ice. But at the same time, the Xhekaj situation was not good either. So both things can be true.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's put this altercation behind us and let's dig more into the nitty gritty. Let's get into the game. Let's get to our 3 stars on the other side, and we got some new practice lines, Dave, cooking in Leafs practice today. We'll go through those and see what we can glean from that as well. We're getting a little peek into the vision of what the Maple Leafs could look like come night one against these same Montreal Canadiens. Will sparks fly there? I'd imagine so. So we'll get to all that and more on the other side. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The Gametime Picks curation system makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater events, whichever you want to get tickets to. They've got all-in pricing. They've got great seat views. You can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you even buy it. And they've got the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What is it? Game Time. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as we are each and every weekday morning, Monday through Friday, all season long. And today's episode, we are reacting to a Maple Leafs victory, 2-1 over the Montreal Canadiens. I know, guys, it's preseason. We're pumping the brakes. We're not planning the parade or anything. Relax. But a win is a win, and some pretty good performances, I would say, in that game as well. So as we do after each and every win, we go through our 3 stars of the game. Dave, who was your number 1 star? Let's start up at the tippy top.
Well, you got to go with Nicky Bobby.
Yeah,
Nick
second game in a row, buds. Second game in a row. Nicky Bobby, first star.
He scored the last 3 goals in the preseason for Toronto, dating back to the last game.
Yeah.
I think he's found his scoring touch. I don't think he's ever lost it, but he's got it.
He's looking good. Nick Robertson, obviously, there's a lot of pressure on him to perform, especially after the first game. You saw Max Pacioretty go out and score a couple of goals, and it was like, uh-oh. Robertson, his role with this team might be dwindling, right? And all of a sudden, he said, I got a couple words to say about that. Scores the game winner against Montreal the other night, and then scores the only 2 goals that Toronto was able to muster up against this Montreal team, which was enough for the win. Scored 2 goals on 3 shots. But it's just like the super quick release. I mean, both those goals, it's just like he does have an amazing shot. I remember even hearing back when Robertson was young and a rookie, Austin Matthews saying that Robertson probably had the next best shot at camp next to him when it comes to being, deceptive and how quick he's able to get it off. And you saw that in this game, right? Just a super deceptive shot, goes 5-hole. And it's just, I was reading up on it. And apparently he was talking about how, he's got his, a few different slot angles that he likes to shoot the puck from. And like, he just has that shooter's touch, that shooter's feel where, he can put the puck somewhere on his shaft and he knows exactly where it's going to go and how it's going to go. Is it going to get lift? Is it not going to get lift? And he can be deceptive with it too. So, Robertson clearly is still battling for one of those final spots on this roster. And he's done an excellent job over the last couple of games to prove that he deserves to be there. So good on Nicky Bobby, man. He's definitely, I think, he's at least leader in the clubhouse, I would say, for one of those final spots on this roster at this point.
And that's what we were looking to see from him, right? Go out and earn your, make people understand why the Leafs didn't want to get rid of you, right? Mm-hmm. And I think he's showing that. I don't think it's too far out of the realm. No, obviously, you're seeing the lines of practice, which we'll talk later. I think we're seeing him cement himself a spot right now.
Yeah. And, it'll be interesting to see, like, maybe even some other teams start to come back to the table with a better offer, more so what the Leafs were asking for in the summer. I don't think it's like a foregone conclusion that they want to keep Robertson if there's still a request to get traded. If a team meets their demands, we'll see. But hey, if this is the Robertson that the Leafs can get, they'll be in a good spot. All right, second star of the game, Dave.
Oh, it's got to go to the goaltender, Dennis
Yeah,
Hildeby.
the Hildeby.
Like, so through 2 games, I know this was the one he also played the full one. He has stopped 36 of 38 shots. He has a .947 save percentage and a 1.35 goals against average.
Is that good?
I think that's pretty good.
Is that not bad? Yeah.
I think it's pretty decent.
Yeah, it's decent. That's decent. That's pretty good. It's pretty good. Yeah, Hildeby was great. And like the Leafs were shorthanded a lot in this game too. And they always say your best penalty killer's got to be your goaltender. And, he is. But the thing about Hildeby is, like, he just shows off like great athleticism. Like, for a big dude, man, is he flexible. And can he ever, just get to spots. He takes up a lot of space, but he also can just, like, move pretty nicely within his crease and go, post to post, east to west, which is great to see, right? Athleticism paired with size, like, that's what you want in a goalie. So again, Hildeby, he's not fighting for a roster spot, but he is, fighting for, a spot on the depth chart alongside Matt Murray, where it's like, okay, if an injury occurs, who gets the call up? Who gets to come up and be, that team's backup goalie? Who's the third goalie on the depth chart? And Hildeby showing why, it should be him, right? Showing off why it should be him over a guy like Matt Murray. Stopped 26 of 27 in this one. And he looked great. He's my second star as well.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing from him. And again, we've seen some things from him since he's come over from North America. And I like the progression right now. I think we obviously need to see how he'll play once he gets to the AHL, but I definitely like what I'm seeing from him.
And the third star of the game.
I had a couple of options here I was thinking of. So I'm going to give it to Matthew Knies.
Okay.
Thought he had a pretty solid game. He was a big part of the second goal, the game-winning goal, made a nice play for Robertson. But this was a game where you didn't have a lot of NHL guys. You had literally a handful of guys who played in the NHL last year on this roster, and he was one of them. Yeah, I've liked what I've seen from him in the preseason. Yeah, he's not put up a lot of points, but he's shown the other parts of his game how they've progressed.
For sure, I'm with you. I think he's played really, really well. Like he's played a lot. I think third game. He's played 3 of the 4 games now. So he's playing a lot too. I guess he's young. He's so he can. And the coach is testing him pretty early on. But yeah, I think that he's asserting himself as like one of the better players when he is out there, which is always good to see. Shout out to Matty Knies. I want to give it to the penalty kill. 7 for 7 on the penalty kill, and they were quoted calling it a pressure kill because Lane Lambert, who's now taken over the penalty kill, last year wasn't great. Obviously, I think they ranked 23rd in the NHL. And this year, so far in the preseason, 16 for 16 on the PK, which they're calling the pressure kill, because their main goal is to put pressure and not allow teams to set up, not allow them to move the puck with authority. And that's really what they're trying to do here. So being able to succeed in this with this pressure kill and kill off all 7, I think that makes a lot of sense to give them kind of the third star of the game.
Also, special shout out to Connor Timmins.
Little resurrection of Connor Timmins. Yes,
he played. I mean, you're talking about with the penalty kill and things like that. Guy played over 23 minutes.
Yeah,
23 and a half minutes in this game, and he obviously had the secondary assist on the Robertson opening goal.
Question for you: do you think he squeaks through waivers?
Right-handed shot defensemen are highly coveted, but I just don't know if a team. He's got a bit. It's a high salary for a guy who's seventh, eighth defenseman, right? Like I think that, but I think a team that's
Seventh, eighth
looking,
defenseman on a good team, but
yeah,
let's say it's like San Jose
or
or
Chicago. Like I
Chicago.
think I could see one of those teams looking, especially one that might want a guy who can produce on the power play.
Hmm.
Like those guys that they are coveted, right? So I don't know if he would make it through waivers. It would help the Leafs salary cap a little bit if somebody claimed him, but getting nothing for Connor Timmins would also kind of
Well, I
is
believe his whole salary is variable,
yeah, it
so
is.
the salary cap space doesn't necessarily factor in there. But eh, I don't know. Is there still a team out there that believes in Connor Timmins? He's what, 26 now?
Mhm.
Possibly. I think one of those bottom feeder teams might want to just give him a chance where it's like, all right, if he can play every night, let's see what it looks like. So maybe someone who could go through squeak through waivers, but also I could see maybe another team kind of looking at him. All right. Speaking of Connor Timmins, was he part of the Maple Leafs new practice roster? Because we got some more lines, some new lines in practice this morning on Monday. Why don't we take a look at them and see what can we glean from these practice lines? A little glimpse into what the Maple Leafs are going to look like come opening night. So we'll do that next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season big with big returns on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view their live play-by-play, and get so much more information on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. You can place that bet on anything. You can place it on Maple Leafs futures. You can go and place it on Mitch Marner. He's got his over-under total set at 90.5 points. Is he going over that total? Place a $5 wager as your first bet on FanDuel and get yourself $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you do that. That's over at FanDuel.com. Welcome back into the Locked On at Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti with you as we are each and every day on the Locked On Leafs podcast, where you can find us wherever you get a podcast, and also in video form up on YouTube. All right, Dave. So after this weekend's festivities, couple of games against the Montreal Canadiens, I was quite surprised actually to wake up today on Monday morning and not see a cut list. We haven't seen like a big,
No.
massive cut list yet from the Maple Leafs. You think we get one by like at some point later today? Like by the time we have to record for tomorrow's show, you believe we have a cut list?
I think so. It's leaning towards that coming. Yeah, I think there aren't many teams that haven't made cuts at this point. Like I've seen a lot of cut lists, a lot of guys being put on waivers and things like that. So
Mhm.
I'm a little surprised, even just not even to see who the minor league camps got to like the AHL camps got to start soon.
Yeah, true. So like a lot of those guys you would expect to see, take off and go back down and start the Marlies camp. But nothing as of the recording of this episode. Could see something coming down the pipe later today. And maybe that is why we have a defined practice group that practiced on Monday. Why don't we pull up what the practice lines look like today? And you could see exactly who was practicing with the main club. And it looks basically like everybody who still has a fighting chance. And that's really what we're looking at for guys who still have a chance to prove that they can be and should be part of this Maple Leafs roster. So for those listening to the podcast, I'll narrate what the lines looked like in camp. You had Nyes, Matthews, and Marner. You had McMahon, Domi, and Nylander. So Domi and Nylander were both splitting reps at center, by the way. Notable, kind of, but that just making that known. Pacioretty, Holmberg, and Robertson, Lorentz, Camp, and Reeves, and then Easton Cowan and Nikita Grabenkin also taking part with the main skate today as extras. So they're still around, right? They still are around, and you could argue that maybe this is these are guys who definitely are not getting that first wave of cuts. Now there's 2 more games, and I would imagine that you're going to play some of those Marlies guys in those final 2 games. Grabankin, Cowan probably will play those 2 games. Maybe Pacioretty will get into Pacioretty might get into one more. Lorentz probably still will get into a game, and then you want to keep some of those AHLers around to get into those games. But it does look like this is going to be the group of, what do we got, 14 players here right now, group of 14 guys that that Craig Berube is looking at as the dudes who are going to make the team. I should note also that Tavares was not at practice today. He was skating on the other pad at the Performance Center, along with Jarnkrok, Dewar, and Hakanpää as well, who I guess technically will also factor into this equation, I would imagine. But as of now, it looks like, the Leafs know, okay, these are at least the guys we're looking at heavily at this point.
Well, that's what. Yeah, I think it looks clear, but then when you add the Jarnkroks, the Tavares, and then you've got, eventually Connor Dewar, it gets a little more. It gets very stuffy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we know Cal and Grabankin, they're more than likely not going to be with the main club out of camp unless the Leafs decide they really like what they see and they want to give them a shot. But the numbers game, I think right now are really. They're speaking volumes right now based on what we're seeing with the forwards, especially because Holmberg at center, that's interesting. I think they want to give him, like, we haven't seen that really that much through camp, so I find that interesting as well because
kind of a Tavares placeholder.
Yeah, Tavares placeholder, but also I want to see him play center.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see what he can do at center because I think if I had a choice of who I'd want at center, especially on the 4th line, I would pick a Holmberg, right? I think there's just a little more upside to his game. And if he's going to be able to do this stuff defensively, I would like to see him get that opportunity to play center. But yeah, we're getting a pretty, at least in the top 6, I think McMahon probably a bit of a placeholder for Jarnkrok and probably likely gets moved down. But like, even then you move McMahon down, it's like, there's like some clear. There's like
I don't know if that's the case. I mean, maybe, perhaps, like it's not totally out of the question. I guess that could be the possibility. But
I thought McMahon was going to be in the top 6 right at the start of the camp, but they put Jarnkrok there because of his defensive play. But
yeah,
I kind of prefer McMahon, especially with his size and physicality that he can bring there. So it's going to be, I just think, it's going to be very interesting when Tavares and Jarnkrok come back, how that all shakes out, because there's going to be some very interesting roster decisions coming.
Oh, for sure. And like, keep in mind, I'm curious. Do you see in a world where the Leafs don't honor that wink, wink, nudge, nudge PTO with Pacioretty? Like if Robertson proves that he's ready and Jarnkrok gets healthy, and let's say Cowan impresses to a point where it's like, we got to give him this 9-game look. Like, do you see that happening? Like, has Pacioretty really played well enough where it's like, man, we got to make sure we keep this guy around and get him on the team? I don't know if that's the case, man. Like, I would imagine that it's this is a hypothetical that's probably not going to play out that way, but like, to you, has Pacioretty played better than Robertson? Has Pacioretty played, better than Cowan? Has he, has he really established himself as we got to have this guy in the lineup type of player? Like, I don't know.
The first game did. I saw what I think they saw in Pacioretty, but
against
yeah.
I need Belleville
to see,
Senators. Keep that in mind.
I need to see one or two. I need to see more. Like I am very curious, but I think Lorentz is probably the one that doesn't get the deal if we're looking at. I like Lorentz. I think he's.
I think
pretty good.
Lorentz looks more
He has I know exactly how he's going to play each and every game, right?
Yeah, like
Pacioretty, there is a bit of a wild card there, but maybe it's one of those. Pacioretty, if they do sign him to the deal, he's not going to be playing every game, which I don't think he would be anyways.
well, then hopefully he's not getting that, $1.2 million contract if that's the case.
Is
Which is
that
what
what they were reporting?
well,
That it
like
was?
whatever's left
Yeah.
is apparently going to Pacioretty, and the estimation was it was in the range of like $1 and $1.2 million in cap space.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if he's not playing every night, is he worth giving that much to, or is this
No.
like hey, come in, give you 800 grand, the league min, and let's get rocking. Okay, sure, whatever. Then that
That's
way
what I was thinking. Like if he really just wants to play and
it
show that he
doesn't
can
sound
still
like
got it,
that's the case.
yeah. I
But
don't know. I don't want to. I don't think they should be blowing their budget to give Pacioretty. I think there's other areas that could be used for that money for sure. I think like Robertson's looked pretty good.
yep.
You can't discount how he's looked and what he provides. I know that people like Pacioretty, but it's nice to have a Pacioretty, but it has to make sense.
Yeah, I too like there's possibilities of a trade to come down at some point with somebody, right? Pacioretty could sign elsewhere also, but possibly we could see a trade come through, and maybe it's maybe Robertson gets dealt, maybe Pontus Holmberg instead of putting him on waivers, which he requires at this point. Maybe someone says, "Oh, we'll give you a third round pick or a fourth round pick for Pontus Holmberg, better than losing him for nothing, I suppose," and it clears out a contract spot, similar to what they did last year with Sam Lafferty to make things work. And maybe David Kampf is the guy who we see potentially get dealt, and Holmberg takes over as the 4C, or Connor Dewar when he's healthy takes over as the 4C. That's the other thing too. Like I just wish we had more of a timeline on some of these injuries. We just don't really know. Like
one thing, just so as we're recording, Craig Berube says Yarncroke and Tavares are expected to take part in the next practice.
Okay, perfect. So Tavares and Yarncroc will be back in the mix, back in the fold. So that's adding 2 more guys to that already 14. So that gives you 16 players, I guess, to now kind of make a decision on if you are Craig Berube and see, all right, what works. So maybe tomorrow we'll know what this team is looking like, I guess, in tomorrow's skate. But I did see something about Connor Dewar, and he may be an LTIR candidate to start the season, along with Hakanpää, which also does suck because this year it looked like they were in a position to not need to be an LTIR, which allows you to accrue cap space throughout the season to give you a little bit more space to use in or at the trade deadline. Might not work out that way. But we'll see. Still a little early to speculate on that.
But I was hearing that Hakanpää was close to maybe practicing this week based on what Berube said the other day.
Yeah, I think on Friday he did say he expects Hakanpää to be practicing with the main group, but they might also just
but yeah, whether that means he's actually close to playing, like close to even being like, as you said, like an actual person to be on the open night roster, that's another story.
I would imagine if he gets into one of these final 2 games against Detroit, then he probably is ready to go, and they probably could play him and not have to start on LTIR. If he's not ready to play one of these final 2 games this weekend, they probably do that and then allow him to do a conditioning stint and get him a couple of games with the Marlies before ramping him up and getting him into NHL action. That's what I would think. Again, just spitballing here, talking out of my ass almost, but that's how I would imagine things would go for Hakanpää. Dewar still unclear. Had that offseason shoulder injury, surgery, and hasn't done a whole lot in practice. He's been skating with that developmental group along with Hakanpää for the duration of camp. So yeah, we'll see what ends up happening with the lineup. I guess tomorrow, if Yarncroc and Tavares are ready to escape the main group, again, we'll get an even deeper glimpse into what this team could shape up to look like come game number 1 against Montreal Canadiens, which little bit more edginess to that rivalry now after this Xhekaj situation. I would imagine. I think that a guy like Ryan Reeves may want to get his hands on Xhekaj once again after what happened this past game. All right, buddy. Anything else you want to talk about, or you want to get out of here for the day?
I think we'll see how the lines are like tomorrow.
Yeah.
And there's a couple things we can touch on for the next show based on what I'm hearing from Perube.
Yeah, might get some cuts too at some point here soon as well that we could react to. So we'll get back into Leafs camp on tomorrow's podcast. That'll do it for us here today on the show. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the podcast. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti. And follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.